Welcome to another Legal Tech Talk session. Many know me, but for those who don't, my name is Frances Anderson. I'm the MD of NetLaw Media. So today, I'm delighted to introduce another thought-provoking session with a formidable panel from the legal community who will offer their insights from both the firm and client perspective on the Agile movement. That will be chaired by a leading industry CIO, Chris White. The session will look at, in the age of an agile law firm, how can project leaders respond rapidly to change whilst exploring the opportunities that purposeful projects offer their firms. We're going to explore specific project systems as well as overarching strategic goals that drive organisations to improve, and also focus on the delivery of competitive client solutions and services. Now, before I go through the general housekeeping, let me start by introducing our chair, who is Chris White. Now, he is a strategic technology advisor and CIO, Whiteboard Consulting, and he started his career in financial services, holding senior IT positions at NPI Asset Management, Schroders, Henderson Investors, and Cogent Investment Operations. He joined law firm Ashurst as a CIO in 2002. Since leaving in 2009, he has undertaken a number of roles, including interim IT director of international law firm Kennedy's and CIO of cloud email management company Mimecast. Chris is a former global CIO of international law firm Clyde & Co, where he managed an IT team of 150 staff across 45 offices globally, and also led the business acceptance unit and litigation support. He advised a number of businesses on IT strategy and how to deliver value from technology. Now, before I hand over to our esteemed chair and guests of today's roundtable, as we are live, I encourage all of you listening to ask questions. So you're more than welcome to join and ask your question live to the panel and to Chris, and we'll bring you into the debate. How you do that, just click on your name to answer the question live. We'll see a raised hand, and then we will pull you in. Or alternatively, there is a chat window, which, as you will know, you can put through your thoughts there. If you'd like to comment on some of the issues being presented or some of the thoughts which each of the panel member puts forward, you're more than welcome to put them there or through the Q&A. Now, without further ado, Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Francis, and welcome everybody to what I expect to be a very stimulating and lively debate. As Francis says, we're running this session for you, so if you have any questions, please just put them forward. So I think it's probably the understatement of the year to say we've been through a very, very interesting 12 months. Interesting is probably one word we could use to describe it. There are probably quite a few others as well. This time last year, we were all merrily sort of going into our offices every day, working a number of hours every day from our desks, and then suddenly the world moved or changed upside down, and we were all forced to start working from home. So today we'll explore a little bit about some of the challenges we've all faced over the past 12 months, but importantly we'll also look towards the future, really to understand some of the opportunities which are out there, and how we are planning to sort of meet those opportunities sort of head on. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by an esteemed panel this afternoon of various people from various firms with a whole range of backgrounds, which should lead to a hugely interesting debate. So before we start, let me just ask each one of the panel members just to give a very quick introduction as to who they are and which firm they're from, they represent. So Kate, perhaps could I ask you to start?
Sure. So I'm Kate Bassett, and I'm the Global Head of Legal Project Management and Process Improvement at Ashurst, and I sit within their New Law division, which is related to all things alternative legal service delivery. And we have various levers such as low-cost resourcing, legal technology, and my team, the LPM and LPI team. We're a fee-earning division, and we have equal status with the traditional law divisions as well, which has been a 18-month transition and a great win for us. So my team are client-facing, and we design and implement delivery models for our clients.
Thank you very much. Tara, would you like to go next?
Yes, hello everyone. So my name is Tara Walsh and I'm Client Solutions Lead at Fortansti. And my role is essentially more at the client end, is looking at some of the solutions in terms of what we are delivering to our clients and how we can enhance that delivery and add value. So we're trying to build the solutions and then look to productize those solutions. So in terms of an agile approach, I think, it's very much where the role that I have lends itself to that approach more than the more traditional project management.
Thank you very much. And Jazz?
Hi, I'm Jazz Bassey. I'm Head of Solution Delivery at Gately. My team looks after delivery of all change across the Gately businesses.
Thank you very much. And James?
Hi there, so I'm James Northern. I'm Head of Legal Service Delivery at Owen Mitchell, with a background in legal project management and process improvement before joining Owen Mitchell. The role now is more about how we then apply any kind of consideration of how we do law and do it better, which I think is a brief summary of what all my colleagues have just said at the same time.
Excellent, thank you very much. As I say, we've got a very, very well qualified panel this afternoon, so looking forward to a great debate. So before we sort of, I move over to the panel, I thought I'd spend a few moments just sort of really sharing with you my sort of view on what's happened over the past 12 months and perhaps some of the challenges that we've all been facing in our firms. And say this time last year, we were all working in our sort of normal sort of way of everybody traipsing into the office every day, and then suddenly overnight everything changed. And during the whole pandemic, I like to break it down into what I consider to be three key phases. The first phase I call survival mode. We were all forced to start working from home, something which a lot of firms were not particularly well set up to do. We all know that, I'm generalizing now, but most firms, they didn't really embrace too much sort of the home working, the agile way of working. It is often said that, partners wanting to see their associates sitting next to them, because if they couldn't see them sitting next to them working away, they couldn't really trust them to work, and all of these sorts of things. And I always felt that was a little bit strange, but that's the culture we work in, and that's the culture which existed in a lot of firms. But suddenly we were forced into a position where that had to change, and change very, very quickly. So we moved from office to a home working environment. This in itself presented an awful lot of challenges to firms. The first one was around technology. There's absolutely no doubt that firms which had invested more in technology in the past, pushed more of their technology to the cloud, had a slightly easier ride than perhaps the firms that were running a more traditional IT estate. You can imagine a firm with 1,000 users having 100 Citrix licenses, because that's the maximum number of people who would normally expect to be working away from the office. Suddenly, everybody needed a Citrix license. Some people had desktops, some people had laptops, but again, all of these changes we were forced upon us very, very quickly. And then there was the major concern about, well, is my business going to survive? Are my clients going to continue to want to work or require legal services? So there was lots of questions about that. I think as it's happened, and history has shown that actually most law firms, in terms of business, their business has held up pretty well. And in fact, we've seen quite a number of firms report very, very good numbers over the past few weeks and months. And also, we've seen a number of firms actually increase their profitability quite a lot, because a lot of their costs, which are normally associated with running a firm, have reduced. So, things like travel costs. Lots of firms' travel costs have reduced enormously, because we've all resorted to using Zoom as we are this afternoon, or Teams, and all of these different ways of communicating with each other. So I think the first phase was what I call survival mode. Are we going to survive as a business, and what do we need to do? Let's batten down the hatches and just survive. And as a result of that, I think we saw a lot of projects come to a halt. Certainly more projects which I would normally put in sort of the innovation camp came to a halt, and certainly a number of projects that I was working on with all sorts of different law firms stopped as a result of the pandemic and going into survival mode. The second phase really is recognizing that at some point we're going to go back to a more normal existence, whatever that might be, and we're going to start having people going back into the office and you know, perhaps not get back to where we were, but how do we plan for getting back into the more normal way of operating, away from sort of the lockdown survival mode. So that was very much the second phase. And indeed, you know, how do we need to adjust our businesses to actually you know, deal with that? You know, recognizing that probably everybody won't be in the office every day, recognizing that maybe we don't need as much accommodation as we might have needed in the past. Perhaps we need to have different control systems in place, management information systems in place, how we manage our people, how we manage their well-being, and all of those sorts of issues. So this sort of process of getting back to a slightly more normal way of operating. And then the final phase I call sort of the opportunities phase, and that is, what opportunities do we see resulting from this whole pandemic, and how can we benefit from this? You know, we all, you know, we've read many times that sort of firms in times of adversity that really do think about the future, invest in the future, are the ones that become sort of stronger in the longer term. And I'm actually working with a couple of firms at the moment who are seeing this as a real opportunity to strengthen and indeed to grow their businesses in the future. They're seeing a number of law firms out there who perhaps are not as strong as they might like to be. Perhaps they might have given up, or they're feeling vulnerable. So the firm I'm working with is looking very much for those M&A type opportunities. They're looking at ways in which they can make far better investment in technology and processes to really re-engineer their businesses. And we hear a lot about you know, the pandemic. We've achieved over 3 months what normally would have taken sort of 3 years to achieve, because we feel we've had opportunities now to actually do these things. Be that you know, reducing the amount of paper we use in our businesses, because sitting at home we don't all have access to MFDs around the corner. Maybe reducing secretarial ratios, maybe automating more processes, maybe de-skilling various parts of our work. So really looking for opportunities where we can really grab the opportunity and progress our business and move our business forward for the future. So those are the sort of 3 key phases I think we sort of run through during this whole process. I'd be interested now in the panel view on these phases, and really looking initially at how they feel their firm has dealt with the whole pandemic, and you know, if you like, where they are in terms of those 3 phases, whether they're still in survival mode, back to normal, or more of the opportunity phase. So perhaps, Kate, could I hand over to you first to hear your views on that?
Sure. So I think for me, before the pandemic, we had an ambitious strategy around increasing new law services for our clients, and also increasing the practice group use of what we do. So we were already on a change journey, and actually the pandemic has helped us, and it's given us more of a burning platform for change than existed before. And there was a big burning platform before. Clients were demanding more for less anyway, but that has now been catapulted even more so as a result of the pandemic. So we're seeing clients ask for more efficient delivery models, transparency, more for less. So in my world, it's actually benefited, and it's internally, people are now listening to our change agenda, and the hierarchies are being broken down. So law firms are typically slow moving, not open to change, takes a long time, but the pandemic showed that those lawyers could change within a matter of weeks because they were forced to. They adopted new technology, new ways of working, new ways of engaging with clients. So it happened very quickly. And there's nowhere to hide now with that. You've done it once, we can keep that momentum and keep it going. So for me, it's quite an exciting time for my own strategy, my own team and agenda. We're a global firm as well. So we saw the pandemic hit different regions at different times, and we've had different recoveries. So APAC is now doing very well. It's recovered. It's probably in the opportunity stage, so stage 3, whereas the UK and Europe probably still in phase of 1, 2. So just keeping the lights on in some countries. The UK is moving into phase 2, where we're starting to think about opportunities. We're re-engaging with clients. So the shutters certainly did come down in terms of client projects being put on hold. Lawyers became very protectionist of their own work. So we were making great strides before of lawyers being open to using technology, automation, using legal project management, and suddenly they were worried about their jobs. So they went back into, I need to keep my work, I need to protect my own job. So we did see a slight dip in engagement with our services, but that's moved on, and people are now recognizing we need to keep on with the agenda, and actually the new law agenda is top of our clients' list of priorities. So for me, it's been a real opportunity.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to come back in a moment to keeping on with the agenda, how we protect ourselves, I guess, again, sort of going back to where we left off 12 months ago, but we'll come to that in a moment. So Tara, could I hand over to you now and ask you sort of how your firm coped and where you think you are in the journey?
Yeah, sure. So I think, you know, as you rightly pointed out, in terms of the first phase, we were quite lucky in that we were already on that journey to cloud-based. We are in our offices, you know, nobody had a set desk, so it was all kind of hot desking. You had a zone that you had to use. So I think the move to working from home was actually quite easy for a lot of people to adjust to. I think obviously conducting your meetings over Zoom and Teams was a hurdle that, you know, I think the partners dealt with really well. And I think, you know, looking at that third phase, actually, certainly for me and what my role is it's allowed it to become easier to pull me into those meetings, because you're not, you know, traipsing across the country to London or wherever to have those meetings with clients. So actually pulling people into meetings at short notice is a lot easier if it's virtual. So I think definitely I've seen an uptick in those discussions with some of our clients, and I think that's a positive. And I think coming out of it, you know, I just hope that we can take all of those positives and move forward and not fall back to where we were previously.
Okay, thank you very much. Jazz?
I think certainly through that first pandemic, we were in that survival mode. In certain ways, we were prepared. We rolled out Teams the previous year. Our business was well versed in using that, but in other ways, we were reactive to the climate and what we were having to do to make ensure everyone could function and work in the way they needed to. But following that, I think we quickly realised we need to look at our change portfolio, need to understand what was on there and where our opportunities were. I think Kate alluded to the opportunities in what she said there. And we then reviewed that, determined where the projects that would deliver benefits and where we needed to focus our attentions. We didn't simply just look to reprioritize those. We looked to understand what it was we need to deliver. And you're right, Christian, what you said. We're delivering things in a far shorter time frame than we ever have before. But I think that's more so down to the fact that there's an appetite to embrace change and to engage with change, certainly within our business. And it led to not only simply delivering more and delivering one example, although not a large project, but electronic document signing, something we attempted to roll out 2 years ago. There wasn't the engagement, there wasn't the desire to engage and adopt that technology. However, when we approached that again back into last year, instantaneously. The engagement was there within the business. The business wanted to work with us in getting it out, and we got it out extremely quickly across many units. And there was a lot of collaboration, not simply within our change team, but across the whole business. And that opportunity has then continued. Led to us probably adding resource-wise an additional third to our change function internally, and that continues to be the way our change portfolio is growing. It's growing both in complexity and size, but there's a desire from the business to engage. We need to ensure that we're tempering that and we're not delivering so much that the business can't adopt that level of change. But I think it's certainly going in the right direction, and there is a very much a forward-thinking view. As far as where we are in the journey, a phrase that many I think use, the new normal. We have a committee that looks at the new normal, that's engaging with the business on not only how the business wants to work, but how our clients want to engage with us as well. And then we'll deliver the technology and the change that supports that moving forward. But I think we're at a good place in that journey now. We certainly were somewhere along that survival piece, certainly through that first pandemic there.
Mm-hmm. So Jazz, you mentioned sort of the e-signatures and things like that. Why was that sudden change? Is it because it was the only way of working and they had to adopt it?
It wasn't necessarily the only way of working. It probably became the least complex way of working, and it was a way that I suppose, being client-centric, is a ways our clients wanted us to work as well. So I think it wasn't prohibitive for us to be able to get documents signed through wet signatures, but it potentially could be for clients. So we need to ensure that we're working in a client-centric way that both supports our business and supports our clients. It's depending on the unit, on how we've rolled it out and how we continue to roll it out. Property teams, for example, they've been hindered in the past by the fact the land registry won't support digital signatures, and now it does. It supports them in a very prescriptive way. So it is down to how the clients use it, how the regulatory bodies support it, but there is certainly the appetite to engage with change here.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. James?
Yeah, I think just following on from something that Jazz was picking up on then, I think from our experience, certainly from my experience, what this whole situation brought in the first instance was a willingness and a desire for people to engage. So the program of change that I was involved in prior to COVID hitting was looking at exactly the kinds of things that Jazz is talking about. So how do we digitize parts of the business? How do we streamline some of the work we do? The kind of things that we all engage in. And that's quite difficult to get traction with in many parts of the business. It's the kind of thing that's been talked about for years, but never quite got there. And suddenly you found that almost overnight, you were having phone calls saying, how can we get this, please? When can this happen? So it was that real shift and a cultural shift really from, I'm not sure, can you test it with somebody else, please? I'd like to see it working elsewhere, to I'd like to be the first, because then it feels a bit more secure and as if we're able to react. I think very much, and it's only my personal opinion, that it was an environment where nobody really knew how to react. So anything that anyone could grab onto that made them feel slightly more secure, whether in their job or their life or whatever it might be, was a positive. And things I found very much that people wanted were very granular. So it was things like, we need electronic signatures. In our world, it was things like, we need a way of getting information on disk that comes in through the post and out to the fee earner who's sitting in his house somewhere. How do we do that? How do we do that with large files that are on there? What's the sharing mechanism for documentation online that we're going to use? And obviously everything that we had in our world suddenly was being used in different proportions. So where we had the facility to exchange documents online internally within the business, suddenly the use of that goes through the roof. So it brought all those questions about how are we working, what can we do, what stresses and strains does the whole thing put on our business? But it was very granular in that first instance for me. I think in terms of where we've got to now, we've kind of come away from that granular and been able to take a bit of time to sort of go up a level from that and say, okay, well, what's this telling us then? What are these things? Do they align with the direction of travel that we wanted to go in from a change perspective before? Does it bring us any new insight? And how do we now turn that into opportunities, as you say? So from our perspective now, we've started taking the time to then sit and say, okay, so I don't personally think we are out of phase 2 and into phase 3. It feels like those two phases interlap very much for us, but we are definitely looking at phase 3 as what the opportunities are to perhaps help define what our new norm could be. I think that's probably the way that our interaction is working with it.
Right, yeah. And how much did the firm rely upon sort of the IT department to come up with these solutions? The lawyer not being able to go into the office to conduct their business as they would normally expect to do. They had to look for different ways of working. How much was that a problem thrown at IT? Go and sort it out for us, please. Come back with solutions.
So we have a change function and an IT function, and yes, a lot of those problems were simply somebody sticking their head up and saying, "Help." We don't know what the answer is. But interestingly for me, lots of people were putting their head up and saying, "I have an answer because our clients use DocuSign, for example, or our clients use some other kind of exchange documentation system, or whatever it might be," which then led to that interaction between. So where previously it felt that things were in isolation, it suddenly became quite a symbiotic relationship between Fairness and the rest of the business.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And how did that work across other firms? Perhaps other panel members like to input to that. How do these sort of changes come about? Was it down to IT to come up with the ideas, or how did that happen? Who would like to input? Yes.
From our perspective, nothing's really changed there. It's not necessarily IT that comes up with ideas. Our change portfolio has feeds in from all areas of the business, whether it be from our support functions or our fee earning functions. They then sit on a portfolio. They're prioritised by our board, and we look to deliver them depending on how that business case is shaped for those priorities. So nothing has really changed there. Again, other than engagement, I think, as with many firms historically, that they may well have had a similar kind of approach, but probably 70 to 80% of what's going through that change funnel has been IT driven. However, I think that there has been a clear shift towards those fee earning functions now driving, or at least supporting that drive towards change initiatives that firms are looking at.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Tara, Kate, have you got anything to add on that?
Well, I was just going to say, so I don't sit within IT, so my viewpoint is slightly different. But I think from a client point of view, we certainly saw, for instance, one of our larger retail clients who wanted to, I think they have like 600 stores, wanted to include a pandemic clause in their lease. Their leases, and helping the client to manage that and also deliver that, that came through sort of me and with the lead partner on that. But it's I think there's two arms to it, isn't there? It's what's happening internally within the business and the firm, and then also the same challenges are happening with our clients, and where I sit is very much, okay, what's happening there? And just on the electronic signatures, we had exactly the same thing. I think when it was tried to, it was a lengthy process to identify the right e-signature partner, but actually it was expedited quite quickly when, lockdown happened, and we realized, some of our clients were having to send documents in a taxi to one person to then another person. So it was kind of like, right, okay, we need to get on top of this. So, seeing some of those areas really pick up was quite promising and, good for everyone, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think, from my perspective, we drew upon the global network. So resources were tight in IT locally, but the pandemic's broken down the boundaries. We're no longer, assigned to an office. We are working in our own office at home, and those boundaries breaking down were beneficial. So we could draw upon the global network. So where some countries perhaps weren't in a lockdown, people were able to get involved more. So I like the fact that we've broken down the resource boundaries and we can access expertise across our network, and people are willing to do that and sort of club together. And it's actually sort of global strategy and practice, which often in large firms it doesn't exist, and it is very office focused. So I think the IT team really benefited from that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that's good to see. So just sort of moving on a little bit, we've talked about some of the impact of the pandemic, and I'm interested in some of the projects which are being run and how the project portfolio has changed over the last 12 months. So every law firm's got a list of things they want to do, be it improve their internal efficiencies, meet client demands, introduce more innovative technology. We hear a lot about machine learning, AI, data, those sort of things. I'm interested in how over the last 12 months that portfolio has changed, or whether it looks the same. Has, as we saw early on, sort of everything which perhaps was forward-looking stopped whilst we actually sorted out our today's problems. Have we got back to that portfolio again? So have we seen lots of changes? If we have, what's influenced those changes? Has it been internal efficiency? Has it been clients, or has it been a mixture of everything? Who would like to start with that?
I'm happy to jump in, if I may. So I think from our side, certainly where we are looking when we're working with clients. So, we have one client at the moment where they needed an end-to-end solution. They were looking to us as a law firm to provide an end-to-end solution to help them roll out 5G across their network. And our part of it is quite a small part from a legal point of view. So I would say less than 30% was actually our lawyers doing that work. But actually, we managed to build a solution that allows them and their other parties to run that project. So from a project point of view, and when looking at that and working with the clients to identify actually what does this look like and what is the shape of it, you then thinking actually, can we use AI to help with this project? And I think that's where, from my point of view, it's very much coming from the client side and saying, we need to do this piece of work for the client. And I think the demand from the clients now is that they're really looking to law firms to say there's been huge growth in legal tech over the last few years. And I think clients are really looking to us to say, actually, we need your help to navigate this. Can you use AI to do this? Or can you use, electronic signatures to help us with this part? And so I think the change is before this, we were all looking at those particular areas like artificial intelligence or whatever it might be. But I think now there's definitely more of a demand from the clients because they're all living the same pandemic and the same challenges that we all are. So I think from that point of view, it's certainly changed and prioritized what we're looking at within the business to service the clients.
And how well do you think your firm, your partners, your lawyers are equipped to actually deal with that? Are your partners feeling confident in going out to their clients and having those discussions with them, or are they coming to you to get the advice and support?
Well, I think generally, because it's easier to bring me into those conversations at an earlier stage, but I think, one of the largest barriers with any change transformation internally is always going to be the partners adopting it, and because they're working with their clients. But actually, we've kind of tried to shortcut that to a certain degree, because when the clients are demanding it, and then the clients are happy with the work you've done, the partners then become your internal champions, really.
Yes.
To say, actually, we used this and it worked really well on this particular project. So it's a much easier sell if the client's completely on board and happy with the work you're doing, certainly.
Yes, okay, thank you. Who else would like to input? Kate, has your portfolio sort of changed as a result of the pandemic we've been going through?
I think it has. I think beforehand we were focused on the internal transformation, so looking at each practice, doing process analysis and looking for the marginal gains. That went on hold as people were just focused on delivering their legal work, and the shift went towards the clients were demanding more end-to-end solutions and more productization in terms of the ask from their law firm. And often law firms can't offer the end-to-end solution. Sometimes those solutions involve advanced legal technology. We have a suite of some legal technology, but we don't have all of it, and we're not professionals in implementing technology for our clients either. So we found we had to start thinking outside the box and looking for collaborations. So looking for partners in the market, in the legal tech space, for example, that could do that element of implementation of contract management solution, for example. And we would do the legal side and look at all the documentation, but we'd partner with a tech provider to do that. So we saw a big rise in projects related to collaborations, and we actually, in an agile way, created a new role, which was head of collaborations, to deal with that and get those collaborations up and running quickly so that we could service the client needs. So that was something completely unexpected in our portfolio. And then the other piece was the increase of, we touched on the automation and digital products that we were offering clients. So the problem we faced was the access to IT resource to get those through quickly. So they were stretched on already enterprise-wide IT projects, so keeping the lights on. And then some of these digital products and projects were innovation projects that had to be fast-tracked to get it out the door. So we found we had to ring fence IT resource to get the innovative projects done quickly. And we had to bypass some of the traditional project processes, again, to be more agile. So some of the project processes exist. You put your business case in, it goes through the panel to be approved internally, and then you have a 3-month lead time to get the IT resource. So that had to go out the window to be agile, and it turned itself on its head. So we found that ring fencing resource for those projects worked really effectively, and then the other resources in IT could focus on the enterprise-wide projects that still had to be done. So it definitely was a change in the project portfolio. For the better, because it was all responding to the client need at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Jazz, James, any input to this?
Yeah, our portfolio certainly changed, both directly and indirectly due to the pandemic. Directly with the more agile focused change initiatives and projects that we've got on our portfolio we've got on there and continue to go on there, but also indirectly, as I said before, the appetite for change has increased, and the appetite for adopting change has increased. So therefore, we've got an existing program delivering new PMS into the business, but there's a number of different facets, policies, and additional other dependent systems that are implementing. But that has picked up momentum with the support that's now receiving. We had an information security program sitting on our portfolio that has continued to be delivered, but the shape of that, I suppose, has changed a little bit due to addressing the challenges in the current climate. But that's the kind of program that will continue to evolve anyway. But we're certainly seeing a different approach to change, and also an increase in change on our portfolio. Our portfolio has probably doubled in size since this time last year, and continues to increase as client engagement leads to fee earners coming back and saying, well, can we do this? A client wants to work in this way. Do we have the technologies to support this, or is there something we can look at in this space? And from an IT perspective, there's always an appetite to get better as well. So there are initiatives that we're looking at potentially feeding into our Agile program, but also supporting our future ways of working, whether that is remotely or in the office.
Okay, so Jazz, you said the a lot of this is being driven by clients. So a client wants something, they come to you and said, look, we'd like to work in this way, or whatever, and you go through a decision-making process, I guess, to decide whether you're going to do that and where it fits into the agenda of things you're doing. How is that then shared out with other clients? So it's not just one client benefits, but your whole client base benefits.
I think that I don't think I said a lot of it's driven by clients, but we have certainly got more client-driven change. It depends on the type of change. If a client's looking for a way of engaging with us for an ongoing instruction that's not simply about one single matter, then we're delivering the tools, the portals, the engagement to deliver that. If a client's looking to work with us in a specific way, I suppose referenced already, but DocuSign and electronic signatures. If a client wants to only sign documents electronically, appreciate we've done this already, but in that instance, that's the kind of initiative we're going to look to deploy and share out amongst the rest of the business, ensuring we're getting the value out of that delivery. But it all depends on what that specific ask is.
Right, yeah, okay, thank you. James?
Yeah, I think certainly the change that we saw with our portfolio as a result of the COVID situation was that everything became more defensive. So overnight, everything was around how do we keep the lights on? You know, the same situation that everybody else had. You know, what do we need to do to be able to keep working from there? And that very much flowed into that level of granularity about these individual problems that that potentially crop up that all needed then to be dealt with. I think where we've got to now, as I say, we've got to that flows out into our portfolio and the journey that a client goes on. We have a mixed, very large private client base and some commercial clients as well. So we have to be all things to all people. So we're having to try and look and say, okay, what are our audiences? What do they look like? And how can we serve them? And how can the core of everything we've got do that? So I think it's enabled us to come out to that strategic point and look at the opportunities that we've got now, whereas it was very granular in the first place, the change that it enforced.
Right, yeah, yeah, okay, thank you. Kate, Tara, just on this point about if you develop something for one particular client, how do you then push that out across the whole of your client base? Do you have any comments on that? How you do it in your businesses?
We very much take the productization approach. So we'd look at any opportunity that came up with a specific client as a process that would be a standard process that you could modify then for individual needs and make a bespoke product, but then you could sort of roll and repeat. So in my team, we have legal process improvement managers who look at things from a process angle. So chunking it up into you know, the generic pieces of that and putting it together and then tweaking it for those specific clients. So that's something we were already doing anyway with those type of resources. So being quite analytical when you're looking at developing a solution and making sure you're looking at the marginal gains that will benefit the firm as well. So not just tailoring completely to one client. Obviously, we need to benefit from that in the long term if we're investing in technology and setting something up.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Tara?
Yeah, and I think there was a really good article last week actually in the FT on design thinking. And kind of my school of thought is you have to build a kind of prototype quite quickly and test it. So we tend to look at a particular, so one of our key clients, we will look at them and the sector that they're in, and then we'll say, okay, we can develop a solution for that particular client. And then what we will do is we'll test it with the client. So we'll produce something, show it to the client, get their feedback, make the adjustments, and then we'll speak to another client in the same sector. And if based on the feedback that we will get, we'll iterate and kind of get it to a point where we have something that we can then look to productize for that particular sector. But it's really, for me, it's about, you know, that old adage, fail as quickly as you can, and make the necessary improvements. And you know, we've had some really good success with that. So I think you can get caught up internally, as Kate highlighted before, that if you're trying to pull on resource from different parts of the business, it's a very lengthy process. And actually, sometimes you don't know necessarily, certainly on the client side, whether something has got legs and whether it is going to be successful. So I think the ability to actually say, let's do something quite quickly, test it, you know, make it better, and then look to productize it is the approach that we've taken here at Foot Anstey.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
I was going to just add to that. I think clients like the concept of productization, and they're always asking what are other people doing in their industry, and we're often in a privileged position to see what other people are doing, and they come to us for best practice because they don't know what's going on. So you can bring that into the productization as well. So this is a best practice tool or way of working. and we're leveraging from really mature clients that we know to some of the less mature, and bringing that all together so that you all benefit from a wealth of experience together.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, thank you. Well, this is very encouraging because certainly in my time working with law firms, lots of clients saying, well, our law firms don't really understand us, they don't really support us. They're great if I have a legal problem they want me to sort out. It doesn't go much further than that. And the clients wanting to build a far stronger relationship with their law firm, almost as their sort of ongoing trusted advisor. I talk a lot about sort of strategic relationships between sort of client and law firm. And certainly from my point of view, running IT in law firms, I always try and build proper strategic relationships with my key vendors, my key technology suppliers to me, so we can really leverage off the knowledge that they've got. So this partnership thing is incredibly strong if you get it right. And it's encouraging to hear that we're sort of moving into this area. And if it's been driven by the pandemic, so be it. Let's hope there's some good things coming out of the pandemic and we can learn from some of the lessons. So that's great. So just sort of moving on in the last sort of 15 minutes or so, don't forget, everybody, if you want to ask any questions, please just sort of put the question in, and we'll attempt to deal with the questions. But in the last sort of 15 minutes or so, I'd like to move on to this this bit about how do we ensure that we don't just sort of revert back to type when this whole sort of ghastly episode comes to an end, assuming it will come to an end at some stage. We hear a lot about this thing called sort of muscle memory, and particularly with relatively conservative type organizations like law firms. I'm very fearful that when we're all allowed to go back into the office again, all allowed to travel and get back to whatever this sort of normal existence is, we just sort of go back to type again, revert to type, and we forget all about the last 12 months and what we've learned, and we just go back into the office sort of 5 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, or whatever. And it all becomes too difficult again, and we just focus on what we've been focusing on in the past, which is just practicing law. How do we think we are going to tackle with that? We've all got transformation, change type responsibilities within our roles. How are we going to ensure we just don't go back to where we were this time last year? Who'd like to go first with that?
I can take that. I think for me it's twofold. So I think we've seen the law firm culture change during the pandemic, and I think many of the newer lawyers coming into law firms will have appreciated that breakdown in hierarchy, and it actually feels like we're working in a startup mode sometimes. There's energy, enthusiasm, people have been empowered to make decisions and inputs. So I think some of those contingents of lawyers will have enjoyed that and won't want to go back to the old model. Obviously miss the social side and interaction of being in the office, but I think they feel they've had an opportunity to speak out and contribute to the way that the firm's been operating. So I think culturally, I'm hoping that change will stick. And I mentioned that we're opening up to a bigger pool of resources now that we're not tied to an office. So I think we'll see different types of people and resources coming into the law firm environment, which will change things as well and help maintain that momentum for change. And then I think secondly, we're going to face the economic pressure. So there's going to be an economic pressure on our clients and a downturn in certain areas. So that will drive the client agenda, and that will force the law firms to respond to that. So, we are going to go into a sort of 2007 type recession in some areas. So there will be those pressures will be heightened, and we won't be able to afford to go back to those old ways. All of the things we've just talked about, the new technology, everything will have to be embraced to make sure that we can offer cost certainty and cost transparency to clients.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I did read a survey. I can't remember who published it. I think one of the legal press fairly recently, and they sort of polled a group of partners, and it was something like, I think it was about 60% of partners all said if they were required and forced to go back into the office 5 days a week again in the future, they would seriously consider changing firms. So there's a lot of people power, I think, around this as well. And I guess it's incumbent upon ourselves to ensure that we listen to people and we do respond to people, to our clients, and, you say, the economic realities as well of running our firms. Yeah, thank you. Tara? How do we stop ourselves going back to the old ways?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I do think there's been a lot of positives from this. And I think, the changes within organizations in terms of adoption of different ways of working, the fact that they don't have to spend so much time on a train across the country, traveling, etc. So I don't think, whilst muscle memory is a real threat, that we will see it. I think the power, there's going to be a massive shift from London. That's where the central power base for the UK legal market certainly was. And I think that, as Kate alluded to earlier, the fact that you don't need to have people in London, and that's where the talent is, that people can have that sort of work-life balance. And, I work at Anstey, where we've got offices all the way down to Truro and Bristol and Southampton. And actually, a large part of the reason that the lawyers choose to work with us is that they want that work-life balance. And I think, if anything, the pandemic has heightened that to a larger degree. So I'm hopeful that actually we won't go back to the way it was previously.
Okay, thank you. Jazz?
2 points Kate and Tara made, the empowerment and balance. I think people have felt more empowered and more engaged to state how they want to work, and finding the balance for them has been key. I don't think we will go back to our traditional way of working, but I don't think we'll stick with the way we're currently working either. There will have to be a blended approach that works for everyone. I think Teams, Zoom, they've all been useful tools over the last 12 months in getting us collaborating, getting us working. But many of us have suffered extremely with Teams fatigue, Zoom fatigue, and I think especially when you're working on some big transformational changes, you need people together. You need people working collaboratively in the same room sometimes. Whether that's a day in, day out activity, I don't think that will be. But there will be a blend. People will be back in offices. People will be working remotely. But people have felt empowered to state how they want to work, and they've been listened to, I think, by and large. And I think that will continue, and that will help support that transition. The one thing we absolutely need to go back to is the pub.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And the sooner the better as well. James?
I think I shared Tara's optimism about this. I think people, in my experience, have now a desire not to go back in the way they did before, and that desire will take us a long way with it. My worry about the muscle memory is the idea of our organisation with its muscle memory, not the individuals within there. So I'm less worried about people going back to their old habits of what they would do, rather that we don't, as Jess said, empower them to be able to embrace the new norm. It's no use them thinking, great, we can split our time and work in a productive way, 3 days a week at home, 2 days in an office, if what we give them are systems and processes that prevent that and harm that. So I think really for me, that idea of what the organisation chooses to then do and act and live and empower its people to do is going to be key from there. Because, as you say, I think most people have got to a point now where, I think Jazz's point was great, where they would like a blend. They don't want to go back. People don't want to commute, as Tara said, but actually they do like to go in the office. Quick example, we had a design sprint last week for a week. It was, as Jazz said, it was 8 hours a day in front of cameras, sitting on the laptops. And part of our reflection at the end is we would have got a lot more done if we'd been in a room together. It would have been shorter, quicker, more productive, or just a little bit more human. But it is what it is at this moment in time, and you have to deal with it. So that kind of blend of activity, I think, will be the way forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. We just got one question that has come in. Kate, this is really directed at you with your sort of LPM sort of function. How are you a fee generating function doing LPM? and what type of work would you, I guess, do for clients and improve the process for how the matter's delivered?
Yep, so we're fee generating by the fact we are on matters. So we are there to track actions, make sure third parties are coordinated, make sure budget is managed. And typically in the past, a senior associate may have been doing that and putting their time on the file for that. So we're a lower cost resource than that senior associate. So effectively the client is benefiting from the reduced cost of that work being done and the value that we're adding. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The second part was, what type of work would you do for them?
So we would design the delivery model for the client. So we would produce a process map to show exactly how the model would work, and that would include how the client needed to interact with us and what the handoff points are, what the documentation requirements are on their side, what data they need to hand, how they need to hand it over to us. So making sure that everything before we start is at its optimal before we get into it, and time is wasted and the costs rack up. So you might see a project manager or a process manager designing that and exactly defining with the client what clauses we need to automate. So that is all, a lot of time needs to be spent on that before automation can run effectively. And then in the delivery of the matter, the LPM is the central point of contact for the client. So instead of reaching out to different lawyers on different work streams, the LPM knows all of the work streams, all of the status, and is that central coordination point. So you have a point person who's a lower cost resource, and you allow the lawyers to get on with lawyering and doing their strategic legal work. So effectively we're coordinating around the triple constraint. So making sure we're meeting the time demands with the quality and the cost as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, I think, you know, we're in the last sort of few moments, just in the way of a summary, you know, the whole pandemic, the last 12 months has been a very, you know, very trying period for all of us, and we've all suffered to some degree. And I think certainly at the beginning there was an awful lot of uncertainty around what the future looks like, whether our firms are going to survive, how we're going to survive, or all of those sorts of things. And I think the summary of this conversation we've had this afternoon has been very, very insightful, and thank you for all taking part in it. But I think, you know, this thing which really sticks in my mind is that, you know, there's been lots and lots of positive things coming out of this, and we're all looking at the opportunities for our firms, and we're all seeing those opportunities as well. And you know, if anything has happened to actually promote, I guess, a slight change of culture within law firms, people are becoming more accepting about the future, more embracing of change, transformation within the business, and better ways of doing things. You know, that's got to be a real positive, because those of us who've worked in firms for a long time, we all know how we sort of putting our hair out from time to time, and sort of feels like sort of beating our head up against a brick wall, trying to bring about transformation and change in firms to a very reluctant group of users. So if the last 12 months have actually helped us in that way, that's got to be a real positive thing. And you know, a couple of sort of phrases which have come out of this discussion of agile thinking, agile decision making. So rather than going through the, you know, the tortuous processes we've all had to go through before, we've been forced down a route of doing things quickly. And as I say, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we continue on this journey, and we bake this sort of change we're now experiencing into the future culture of our businesses, because that's got to be positive for our firms, and it's got to be positive for us as well. So thank you very much indeed for everybody taking part in the conversation. Thank you for everybody sort of listening in, and for your questions. I wish you all the best of luck in our transformation journeys going ahead, and I think there's some, you know, really exciting times to look forward to. And so on behalf of Legal Tech Talks, produced by Net Law Media, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it to be useful. These sessions are put on a regular basis. So if you'd like to take part in more sessions, just go on the Net Law Media website and sign up. And I wish you all the very best, and thank you very much for taking part.